Grand, thanks Shane. I'm just going to try share my screen here, so bear with me a second. Is that it up now?
Yeah, that's it.
Grand. Okay. Thank you, Shane. Okay, hello everybody. You're welcome in tonight. I know it's a lovely evening, so there's probably you could have better things to be doing of a Monday evening, but we'll go with this anyway. So you can see the title there of the presentation. It's Nutrition for Sports Performance. And I have it pitched here. I hope I have it pitched at a level for everybody. So I'm not too sure who's on the call, if we've players, coaches, parents or what. So I hope I have it pitched at a level that will suit everybody. But if there's something that you want me to elaborate more on, or if you have a question on anything, just stick it in the chat box there and Shane will relay it. But hopefully everybody will be able to take something from it. So just first off, you can have a look here. So our performance nutrition, what is it? And you'll probably notice in the last couple of years, nutrition has become a lot more prevalent. And when we're talking about sport and sports performance, you have a tendency to see nutrition linked in there a little bit more. But what it is it's tying in our nutrition, what we eat, alongside the training that we're doing. And essentially what it's going to do is the top line there is going to help us have good health and adaptation to training. And all the other bullet points there kind of fall into that top one there. If we take a good health, like essentially we all have to be eating well for our own health and well-being. And if we are healthy, then we're going to be a lot better player on the pitch. So like health is to the forefront. And then if we have a healthy player, a healthy athlete, they're going to be a lot better for us on the pitch. And then our adaptation to training there is, look, essentially we're training to become fitter, faster, stronger. And if we tie our nutrition in alongside our training, we will adapt to that. So we will get fitter, faster and stronger if we tie our nutrition in. And a big thing I always say to people that I'm working with is that if you have two athletes or two players that are doing the exact same training, the player that looks after the diet away from the pitch is the one that's going to get the fittest, the fastest, the strongest. They are going to adapt to the training, despite maybe the two players doing the exact same training. Recovery there, which is the second point. Look at recovery from training is linked in with that adaptation. So if we can recover from our training sessions, then it leads us to train better the next day. And if we can train better the next day, well, that's when we're going to adapt to our trainings. And we're going to get the gains or the goal of that training, whatever that goal was. And if we can consistently recover, train hard, recover, train hard, that's where the adaptation comes in. So looking at what can we do from a nutrition perspective to ensure that we recover properly. And those are a few things that we'll be looking at in the presentation. And if we recover it and not go on to the next one there, is that we can perform properly. And in that recovery, what we're doing is we're essentially just prepping ourselves for the next session. And if we're prepped for the next session, well, then there we go, we're going to perform to the best of our abilities. A reduced risk of injury and illnesses. Again, if we're recovered and if we can train hard, then there's a less chance of getting injured, simple as. And then the ideal body weight there, if we tie what we're doing, our food wise, alongside our training, you are going to train. Look, we're looking for Gaelic football players, hurlers, camogues that have a high lean muscle mass and a low percentage body fat. And our training is geared towards that. And if we match our nutrition alongside that training, well, then we're going to reach that goal body weight that we need for our sport. So I kind of always start every presentation with this race car here. So if you think of a race car, before it gets onto the track, it has a full fuel tank. So full fuel tank, and as it goes round lap after lap, the fuel tank gets lower and lower and lower. And as it gets lower, what it does is it pulls in for a pit stop in order to top up. And the reason it wants to top up its fuel sources is so that it can continue going for the rest of the laps, or continue out its laps. So our body is the exact same. What we need to think about is before we step onto the training field, before we step on for any match, that we fill up our fuel tank. And we need to fill up our fuel tank, so that we can it'll take us longer to fatigue. So take a match that's 60, 70 minutes long, or sometimes even longer. Like, if we want to finish out that match, we need to make sure that our fuel stores are full before we start. And just like this race car here, if we put the wrong fuel into it, so if we put diesel into a petrol tank, it won't go as we would like. And our bodies are exact same. So if we put the wrong fuel into our tank, will not go as we'd like. So if we take Gaelic football, for example, or in hurling, the main fuel source for us is carbohydrates. And if we're not getting enough carbohydrates, so then essentially we can't perform at our best, and we would fatigue a lot quicker or a lot earlier than we would like. So that's the key thing there, is filling up our fuel tank before we start, and what are we actually putting into our fuel tank. And that links in here with, sometimes we're not sure what we need to be doing, or what do we put in our fuel tank, and social media can skew us a little bit. But if you have a look here on the screen in front, you have two triangles or two pyramids, one upside down. But on the right hand side, or my right hand side anyway, we have this triangle here. The widest base is our balanced diet. And sports nutrition is, people think sports nutrition is all this fancy stuff. It's not. It's doing the basics right, and then supplementing around our training where we need. And when I say supplementing, I don't mean taking a supplement. But if we have a look here, the base of the pyramid is the balanced diet. We need to get that right first. Then we can work our way up here to sports nutrition. And sports nutrition here is tailoring our food in and around our training sessions. It is adding in extra carbs because it's a training day, or maybe adding in extra proteins because I'm in the gym and I'm looking to put on to put on a little bit of size. So that's what our sports nutrition is. And then on top of that is the supplements, very, very narrow on the top, because we don't want to be dependent on those. And you will only supplement if we need to get a small gain somewhere along the line. And for me, it's a food first approach. A lot of the players that I work with, there'd be very few supplements involved. We don't tend to go down that route. It's a food first. And on the other side then, what you can see is where supplement companies basically, but social media might lead you to believe that we need to start with the supplements first and work our way down. But the reality is you can't supplement a bad diet. So despite what you might see on social media, and you might read from sources that you shouldn't be taken from sources that really you shouldn't be getting your nutrition information from, this here side is not the way to go. So it's the balanced diet first, and then working our way up, tailoring around your nutrition. So what is a balanced diet? And it's really, really basic. You've probably all seen this food pyramid before, and it is nothing fancy, but we need to start here, and then we can add in or take away as we need. But if you have a look at the bottom of the food pyramid here, and again, it's widest, telling us that we need to eat most of these foods, or base our diet around these foods here. At the bottom of the food pyramid there is the fruit, vegetables and salad. And what you get from these foods is we're going to get carbohydrates, so that's an energy source for us. And if you think about what I said at the beginning there about carbohydrates being an energy source for Gaelic football, well then, if normal Joe Soap here in the food pyramid needs to be getting 5 to 7 portions a day, well then if I'm trying to train 3 or 4 times a week, well I need to make sure I'm hitting that 5 to 7 and maybe a little bit extra. So what we're getting there is energy, but we're also getting loads of vitamins and minerals as well. And if you go on to the shelf on top of that, then is our carbohydrate shelf again, and it's the wholemeal cereals, breads, pastas and potatoes. And again, you can see you need 3 to 5 servings a day. If we're very active, we may need up to 10 servings per day. But this is where a lot of people go wrong, is that we don't really judge our portion sizes. And if we're quite inactive or quite sedentary and we eat too many of these, we can go a little bit wrong in terms of weight gain. But the reality is, if we are training a lot, we do need to be getting a lot of these foods into us, because it is our energy source. And I'll touch on that in a little bit on the next couple of slides. But note the colour of that slide as well. It's brown bread, brown rice, brown pasta. These are the types of carbohydrates we should be choosing rather than the white variety. So what they are, they're going to be higher in fibre. And if they're higher in fibre, it means that it's good for your gut, number one, But number two, it means that it's going to provide us with a slower release of energy. And if it's providing us with a slower release of energy, it means it's energy that we can bank. And if we can bank it, then we can utilize it later on in the day in our training sessions or in our match. So it's the type of energy that we can store and we can use nice and gradually throughout the day, which is exactly what we want. If you take the next two shelves on top of that, that's our protein shelf. I'm just going to zone in there on the milk, yogurt and cheese. Protein is really, really important. And again, I'll touch on that in a few minutes. But for this shelf here, I'm not too sure who's on the call, but if we've any teenagers or parents of teenagers here, it's really important that we get a sufficient amount of dairy in our diet because of the calcium. And calcium is really, really important for our bone health. And we can only lay down our strongest bones possible in our teenage years. So when we're growing and up to about the age of 20, we're going to be able to lay down the strongest bones possible. So it's really important for teenagers to get to up to 5 portions of dairy per day. And if you take your milk there, for example, milk alongside your dinner would be recommended for a teenager, but also before exercise and post exercise as well. Like milk is the best sports drink you could have. So maybe that's something that the parents who are on the call here could take on board. And if you note then, just we'll jump to the top of the food pyramid and you can see that it's cut off there. And the reason it's cut off is because there are foods there that we don't need to be taken on a daily basis. So the confectionery items, sweets, bars, crisps, etc. And if you look over on the right hand side, it says maximum once or twice a week. So again, maybe we're going wrong there a wee bit. What I'd say to you now is if we just take a minute to think about where we're at. It's now probably 7:45 or so in the evening. Think about what you had today. You've probably ate the majority of what you're going to eat today. So think about your diet and question to yourself, how many portions of fruit and veg do I have? And how many portions that I have from the top shelf? And just take a minute there to count them up in your head and we'll see how you go. I'll not be asking you, but just it's worth reflecting and having a think about it. So generally when I ask that question to a room full of people, I asked for a show of hands how many had 3 portions. I go easy on them. I say 3 portions of fruit and veg per day, and you'd be lucky if half the room put their hand up. And then I'll ask who had at least 1 portion from the top shelf of the food pyramid today, and you'll get a room full of hands. So what I'd say is I think we've got lost a wee bit in terms of what we should be doing, and we kind of go for the quick fixes and the convenience food, and if you go down the shops or any canteens, the foods at the top there are pushed upon us. So what we need to do is just maybe shift that food pyramid on its head a wee bit and shift our thinking a wee bit and make the better food choices. And the big thing for me is, and I'll touch on it now in a wee bit, is that if we're eating the foods at the top of the food pyramid, and it's not about weight gain or anything like that, it's really we're missing out on all the other stuff. Like if we're choosing a dinner that's a deep fried burger and chip, like if you're taking that for your dinner, it means you're missing out on some good carbs, you're missing out on some good proteins, you're missing out on a range of vitamins and minerals that you would have got from the vegetables that potentially would have been on a plate. So that's the biggest thing there. If we're eating majority from the top, there's a whole range of vitamins and minerals that we're missing out on. And particularly now in this COVID-19 situation, not that vitamins and minerals are going to help us not get the COVID, but if we do get it, we'll have a stronger immune system and we'll be better able to fight it. And just overall, throughout our whole day is how we'd feel. Like again, not everybody on the call is a player, but if you're a parent, you're trying to look after kids, you're going to work, and you probably don't feel great in yourself if you're generally taking foods from the top. So again, just making that switch, you'll feel a lot better. Shane, have we any questions?
Just Patrick was just asking, low fat milk and yogurt for teens. for 13, 15-year-olds?
Yes, to be honest, there's a bit of debate whether low fat's better for us or not. To be honest, there's no harm in full fat milk, but what I'd say is if you're someone who is looking to lose weight, go with the low fat, but don't just go for the low fat if you're not looking to lose weight. And teenagers are fine taking low fat. It's actually under 5s should take full fat, and anybody after that can take the full. Anybody under 5 can take full fat, but that makes sense. Anybody under 5 don't take low fat, and everybody else can take low fat. Is that okay?
Yeah, perfect. There so far.
Grant. Right, so we're going to zoom in a wee bit now on our key nutrients for sports performance. And the first one here is our carbohydrates, which I mentioned was the bottom of the food pyramid there, but you can see those are the types of foods there on the screen. But as I said, it is our main source of energy. So if it's a main source of energy, it means we need to be getting them in across the day. And that's for everybody, regardless if we're playing sport or not. But then if you are playing sport, that makes you think, okay, well, I definitely need to be getting these in to make sure that we have the energy then to get up and down the football pitch or to do our training as best we would. And the key thing here is that we only have a store of carbohydrates. So it's not an unlimited store. So the fact that it's not an unlimited store means that it can run out. And if it runs out, then we're going to fatigue. And generally it takes about 90 minutes or more before we'll start for the tank to empty. But we need to think about is before a training session or before a match, in most cases, people's fuel tank won't be full. So there is a high chance that they are going to fatigue during a training session. So what we're looking for there is, and you'll see it on the last point on the screen, is that each meal should contain mainly carbohydrates. So what I need you to think about, and everybody should follow this rule of thumb, is that we should have 3 meals per day and 2 snacks. And for those who are training, the 3 main meals should consist mainly of carbohydrates. So if we took a breakfast in the morning, it could be porridge, which is the best breakfast you can have. So porridge in the morning, then at lunchtime could be a sandwich, that's carbs. And in the evening, we could have potatoes, meat and veg. And that's your potatoes is your carbs. So if those 3 main meals consist mainly of carbohydrates, that's just a basic rule of thumb that's going to help somebody to get those carbs in. And if we train, for example, if you were to train tonight, which is a Monday evening, and we were to train again on a Wednesday, there's a high chance that you were not going to be fully recovered before Wednesday session. And you're 100% not going to be recovered if you don't have a post-exercise meal, if you don't eat well tomorrow and you don't eat well on Wednesday, i.e. don't have those 3 meals with carbohydrates in it. Because if the fuel tank is empty, i.e. if we do a tough training session tonight and the fuel tank runs low, it can take 48 hours for us to fill up that tank again. Okay, so if you don't get your 3 square meals in of the carbs tomorrow and Wednesday, there's a chance then you're going to train on Wednesday and the fuel tank hasn't fully filled up. And there's a greater chance then you'll fatigue towards the end of training. So to put that into perspective, and the way I like to put it to players is that if you have a training session and the coach is doing sprints with you at the end of training, and you're not able to give your best in those sprints, all because your fuel tank wasn't full or you're fatiguing, well then you're kind of wasting the end of that training. Whereas if you can do your best in those sprints, that's when you're going to get the gains, because you can repeatedly sprint harder, do the sprints, and then all of a sudden you're getting fitter and you're getting faster. Take a match situation, then you're into a match and the match is 60, 70 minutes long, but 10 minutes into the second half, you're already feeling tired and sluggish. Again, that's just because the fuel tank is running low on you. So you need to be thinking about this consistently. And like a big thing, a telltale sign is the heavy legs. So if you come into training on the Wednesday and the legs are heavy and tired, well, that's a telltale sign that you haven't fully recovered from the Monday night session. So what I'd say to any players there is that if you do note to yourself that you have heavy legs, well, just think back, what did you do during that day in terms of your eating? And then you may need to increase the carbohydrates then to make sure that you'll be accounting for all the training that you're doing. And next key nutrient is the protein. You'll see there from the image that your protein is your meat, fish, eggs. Dairy comes in there as well. And
Sharon, just before I stop you there, a question: if you're training on a school night, getting home at 9 p.m., what would you suggest for replenishing energy used up? A bowl of pasta before bed, or is there something else which might not sit so heavy overnight?
Yeah, I'll pull up on the post-exercise meal towards the end, but what I'd say is a bowl of pasta maybe at that time, depending on what type of training you've done that day, mightn't just be the best thing, but something like scrambled eggs and toast would do the trick for you at that time of the evening. So I'll pull up on that, but anything goes. If you want pasta and it sits well with you, that's fine.
Just another one there, Sharon. Lots of talk about vegan diets as being best for exercise. Any thoughts on this?
Lots of thought about what, sorry?
Vegan diets.
Yeah, to be honest, nothing against vegan diets, and if somebody wants to have a vegan diet, it can be adapted for sports. But is vegan diet the best diet for sport? No, not really. It can be well adapted, and if you are a vegan, it takes a lot of attention to detail to make sure you can get a sufficient amount of protein in. It can be done, but would I be recommending to go vegan? No. But if you wanted to go vegan, absolutely no problem. It can be adapted for a sports person, but would I be pushing it for somebody? No. Okay.
Okay. I think there might be an echo. My voice there.
No.
No. Sharon, ideally, how long before game and train should you have your last meal of carbs?
We'll pull up on that again towards the end. It's typically 3 or 4 hours, but whatever suits an individual as well.
Okay.
I'll keep going.
Yeah, going. And there's a few more questions, but I'll add them in as we go along.
Yeah, some might be covered. We'll do pre and post. We'll pull it all together towards the end. So protein here. Look, protein is the main building block of the body, and essentially we are made up of protein. And if I told you that, so I says we're mostly made up of protein, well, that's a trigger to yourself to say, right, well, I definitely need to be getting protein in on the diet. But for somebody then who is training, and what we do when we're training is we do put stresses on the body, and if we're stressing the body, well, then we need to get a little bit extra protein in order to ensure that we can repair any of the damage that's done during training. And for anybody then, and for all of us actually who's playing any type of sport, like, we do want to be strong. And if we want to be strong, then that means we need to adapt to our training. So if we want to adapt to the training that we're doing, we need to have an extra little bit of protein thrown in there as well. So again, I'm not too sure who's on the call, but anybody who's doing gym work, or any underage players who might be doing a little bit of body weight exercises, or any of us who are at home during COVID that are doing all these exercise classes and circuit classes and whatnot, if you want to adapt to them, i.e. become that little bit stronger or get that muscle tone, you do need to throw in a little bit of extra protein into the diet. But when I say that, like, protein goes a long way, and you'll see there on the last point is a simple rule of thumb for me would be just make sure each meal contains a small amount of protein. So if we took what I said, mainly carbs, take porridge in the morning. If you make it up with milk, that's going to be protein, and you could add extra nuts or seeds with that. Will give you an extra bit of protein. If you took, a sandwich at lunch. So if we had a sandwich and we put chicken onto it, well, that's the protein. If we have, and I think I said potatoes for our evening dinner. So if we have potatoes alongside some meat or some fish, well, then that's going to be our protein. So that's the way to do it. A small amount of protein in each of our meals across the day is again going to tick that box for us in terms of giving us that a sufficient amount of protein. And I had mentioned 3 meals, 2 snacks, and we might need to work our way up. If we're doing extra training, we might need greater portion sizes or an extra meal or an extra snack in there. But if we think of our snacks, if we need an extra protein snack, you might just snack on Greek yogurt, for example, is high in protein. You might snack on nuts and seeds, or it might be a case that you need a bigger portion, and your snack might be beans on toast or scrambled eggs on toast. Again, depending on your needs, and if you're very, very active, your snacks will need to be a little bit larger. So this here, you can have a look, is just in relation to our fats and sugars. So if you take that top image there, and the top image is, there's a sugary breakfast cereal, there's white bread sandwich, there's crisps, there's can of Coke, there's crisps, or there's biscuits, sorry, there's a load of processed food on the right hand side there. So what we have there is 2,000 calories, and in the bottom we also have 2,000 calories. So in terms of if you were to eat either top or bottom, in terms of weight gain, no difference. But in terms of how you feel and how you prep for your training sessions and how you can train will be absolutely miles apart, because on the bottom what we have is brown bread, avocado and eggs on brown bread. We have a risotto, we have a curry, we have fruit as our snacks, and we veg in our snacks and popcorn. So what we have on the bottom there is carbohydrates that we can store and bank and use for our training sessions. We have got protein there, again, protein that we can help us to recover and to adapt to our training sessions and keep us injury free. And we've loads of fruit and vegetables that are going to give us the vitamins and minerals to help us keep us healthy and also to help us to adapt to our training. So this is the big thing for me here, is no problem with somebody eating crap food every so often, but if they get the basics right first. I'd have no problem with somebody sitting eating a packet of crisps if they ate it alongside this here at the bottom. But if you're living off this stuff here at the top, you just don't feel great and you can't train great. So you're coming to train and you're tired and sluggish, and that's fine to do that once. But if you come to train and tired and sluggish the next night, you can't push yourself, you don't train well, and you do it again the next night, can't push yourself, don't train well, and then you end up getting injured as well. So you're not just adapting to the training session as you would like. So i.e. not getting fitter, faster and stronger. And again, the second image will represent this as well. So on the top there, we have a burger and chip, 930 calories, which is grand. But for the same 930 calories, look at all you can get there in the bottom. And people say to me, Sharon, you're not going to let me eat anything. I say, look, I will let you eat loads, as long as it's loads of good stuff. And what we have there in the bottom is loads of good stuff. Again, we've got the energy that's going to bank and store and use for training sessions, allowing us to train really, really hard. We have got the protein there, which is going to help us to adapt to our training and become that little bit stronger and more resilient. And again, loads of colour. So we've got vitamins and minerals that are going to help us stay healthy, injury free, and also help us to use the energy that we're getting, or use the energy that we're getting from the other foods. So again, it's the player's choice, obviously. It's everybody's choice. But what I'd be asking people is, more often than not, try to make the right choice. So if you're faced with a banana and a Mars bar in front of you, and you're training this evening, you just say, oh, do you know what? I really should take the banana over the Mars bar. So you're faced with the choices all the time. Just try and consistently make the better choice. And if we can do that, then that's what allows us to go to the trainings, train hard, and then adapt to our trainings. And you'll notice I keep saying training. And the reason I say training is because we train more often than we play matches, unfortunately. And people used to be worried about match day nutrition or the weekend of a match. They look after themselves. But the reality is all the gains are got in training. So we need to make sure that we're going to training, able to train well, able to adapt to the training and repeat that process. And in repeating that process, then that's where we get all the gains, and we'll be able to then on match day do a lot better. Any questions there?
Yeah, sorry, Sharon, there's a few. What about dairy intolerance? What would you substitute with?
What I'd suggest there is just look at the labels of any of the milks that you can get, the milk substitutes, and just check the protein content and the calcium content in them. But any of your milks, some of them are higher in protein and no calcium in them. Some have calcium and they don't have protein. So just have a look at the labels, really.
Okay, and what would you recommend for after school meals, snacks, about 4:30 if you're training at 6:30 or 7 o'clock?
Again, it would just be tick the box for carbs there, and it would be whatever would suit you. So if you could have a dinner and the dinner sat well with you, great, have the dinner. If you could only stomach a smaller dinner, go with the smaller dinner, or it'd be a case of maybe making up a sandwich. So we'll kind of cover maybe some of that a little bit later on, but it's whatever sits right with you. But carbs is the driver there because you're talking about providing energy for training.
Okay, and just another two there. How do you gauge a portion size?
So what I'd say is, if you can download the just the food pyramid, from Google it, and it'll take you to the food pyramid, and they have good resources there in terms of judging your portion sizes. Generally, if we were to take a plate, what I would suggest is on a non-training day, for example, if you were to take your dinner, that half of the plate was the vegetables, a quarter of the plate was the carbs, and the last quarter was the protein. So a quarter protein, a quarter carbs, and half vegetables. But on a training day, you might want more carbohydrates, so I'd go half carbohydrates, quarter protein, and a quarter veg. So that might help to answer that.
And just like you might touch on this in a wee while, but to get the best out of your recovery post activity, is there a time period when you should get your meal into you?
Yeah, ideally straight away. So ideally in the first half an hour. And again, we'll touch on that in a minute.
Okay, that's us covered there, Sharon.
Grand, cool. So you can see just on the screen, we're going to move on to hydration. And as much as the nutrition and the food end of things is really important, this hydration is really, really important. And you'll see there we need to be eating drinking about 2 litres per day. 2 litres is kind of thrown out there, or 8 glasses of water. We don't necessarily need 2 litres. The reason I say that is because everybody's different. Some people are bigger or smaller, more active. And if we eat more fruit and veg, we're going to get more water from those types of foods. But 2 litres, some people is a good figure. You might only need 1.5 litres, 2.5 litres, 3 litres for some, but just be conscious that it might be in and around the 2 litres for you. But how do you know yourself? You'll just have a look at the colour of your urine every time you go to the toilet. So you're aiming for a colour there of 1, 2 or 3, so kind of pale yellow to clear. So every time you go to the toilet, just have a look at the colour of the urine, and if it's a little bit darker, that's a sign to you that you're dehydrated. You need to drink more. Okay, and for everybody that's on the call here, whether you are a parent, coach, a player, hydration is so important in terms of our physical and mental energy. So just you'll feel better in yourself. And probably now these times during COVID, when we're at home, hydration is nearly one of the first habits that you lose, but you just feel sluggish in yourself. So get into the habit of carrying the water bottle with you, or having a glass there beside you, because it's key. But you can see there on the left-hand side of the screen some of the physical and mental effects of being dehydrated. And what I generally say, if I was to list off a reduction in muscular strength, a reduction in concentration, and asked you, is that what you want when you're on the football field? The answer would be no. So if the answer is no, well then why let ourselves get into that state of dehydration? So make sure before every session that we are hydrated, and then make the use of water breaks and whatnot during your training session and during a match, because we don't want any of those physical and mental effects that are on the left-hand side. And when we are dehydrated, we're going to lose, because our body is made up of a large percentage of water. If we take our blood, for example, if we lose body water, we're losing it from our blood. And that just means then our blood is thicker. And if our blood is thicker, our heart has to work harder to pump that blood around the body and up to the brain. And if it's working harder to do that, well, then it's working harder and you're going to feel it. So before you even step onto the football pitch, your body's already working harder. So you feel sluggish already. And then if you throw in the fact that, okay, I'm a half back and I have to get up and support the half forward, you don't want to do it. And you feel, your perception of effort is increased as well when we're dehydrated. Our muscles, for example, a large percentage of water. So if we lose a little bit of water there, your muscles will shrivel up a wee bit. And if they're shriveled up, well, then you're going to have that reduction in muscular strength, which is one of the things there. and that means you can't sprint your best. You can't kick the ball as hard as you would like. So these are all knock-on effects of being dehydrated and things that we essentially don't want on the pitch. So to try and offset that, you do want to have that clear colour of urine throughout the day. So we'll pull all this together now. If we take before exercise, the pre-exercise nutrition, the goals are, and I'll be hoping that maybe you'll be able to answer these, and I'm not going to ask you to answer them, but in your head. So what are the goals? So before exercise, we're thinking about filling up that fuel tank, and the fuel that we're using is carbohydrates. So making sure our carbohydrate stores are full, that's just going to help to prevent fatigue. So during a training session or during a match, the fuel tank won't run out, and we want to make sure we're hydrated. So before exercise, we should eat about 3 hours before the training session or the match. 3 hours is kind of good for everybody, but someone might be able to eat a large meal 2 hours before it. It's really that 3 hours, it's to do with our gut and having the food digested, and so that we don't get a stitch during the session. So that 3 hours tends to work for most. And that's your large big meal, but that's not to stop you from having something smaller before, closer to hand. And again, what should it be? It should be carbohydrate based. So mainly carbohydrate, little to no fat, because fat is harder to digest, so we don't want a high fat meal. And these are the foods here, very, very simple, but they're going to tick the box for you in terms of carbohydrates. So pasta and chicken. Potatoes and beans, a sandwich, scrambled egg and toast, porridge. So there, pasta is the carbs, the potatoes is the carbs, the bread is the carbohydrates, the toast is the carbohydrates. So again, it's just very, very simple foods, but really effective because they're ticking that box for carbohydrates. And look, if we are peckish or need something before this session, or as somebody said, if you're coming home from school and you know it's a tight enough window there before you're out the door again from training, something lighter will do the job for you. It won't lie in the gut and it won't give you the stitch, but again, it's carbohydrates. What we have here is fruit, milk, cereal bars, or even a slice of bread and jam will do the job for you. So let carbs be the driver there for your pre-exercise, but find something that works for you. And once it's carbs, it really doesn't matter what it is. Milk, as I said, sometimes if we struggle with nerves, or if you don't have that time to digest the food, milk is something, because it's fluid, we can digest it a little bit quicker, so that might sit well with some people. So for that person who's racing home from school to get out the door again, it might be a milk and slice of bread, or a milk and a sandwich that might do the trick for them there. Then if we were to think of post-exercise, and again, the big driver here is, right, I need to adapt to the training that I've just done, but I also need to recover and start that recovery for my next session. So post-exercise, we need to get the hydration levels back up. We need to get the carbs into us to prep for the next session. And we need to get the protein into us to help us to recover from that session that we've just done. And ideally what we do is get that recovery started straight away, get something into you straight away. Our recovery is heightened in the first half an hour post-exercise. So if we can get food into us, or fluids, or drinks, into us in that first half an hour, what we're doing is we're just making sure we're making best use of that recovery period, and we're just going to recover that a little bit quicker. And if we think about what are we looking for, it's still carbs and protein. So we'll have a larger amount of protein in here post-exercise than we might do before exercise, because we need it to recover. And 20 grams post-exercise is what we're looking for. You can see here on screen I have just snacks in initially, because if snacks or a meal, either or. But if you know you're not going to get home to get a meal, make sure you just get something into you, and it's milk, fruit, yogurts, whatever. Again, tick in the box with a bit of carbs and proteins in it, and the milk is the best sports drink you can get. But if you can get a meal into you straight away, all the better. So what we have there, and again, nothing fancy, but potatoes, chicken and veg. So we've got potatoes as the carbs, the chicken is the protein, a spaghetti bolognese is your mix of carbs and protein, eggs and toast, again, your mix of carbs and protein. So really, really simple foods, but again, they're ticking the box. I have the protein in me, so I'm going to adapt to the training that I've just done. I've got the carbs in me, which means I'm going to be starting that recovery process for the next training session, because remember, it can take 2 days to fill up the the fuel stores again. So we're starting that straight away. And here I have just a sample meal plan. So for everybody that's on the call here, whether we're playing sports or not, a good rule of thumb is to get those 3 meals and 2 snacks in, and then you can build up in terms of portion sizes or an extra snack if we are training. But if you have a look at it, breakfast, lunch and dinner, they're all carbs and proteins and really, really simple food. So a bowl of cereal there, make it up with milk, and you're going to have your carbs and protein, add a bit of fruit to it. Your lunch is the sandwich with some sort of meat on it, or fish is carbs and protein, and your salad for your veg, or for your vitamins and minerals, sorry. Your dinner, again, meat with fish with some either pastas, potatoes. Your veg are in there. There always should be colour as well to get you the vitamins and minerals. And then the supper is carbs and proteins again. You've got your peanut butter, which is protein on a slice of toast. And then snacks generally are fruit and yogurts is really what your snacks should be. But that there is a good rule of thumb. Everybody could follow that 3 meals, 2 snacks, but you just build it up or scale it back depending on what type of training you're doing, or let carbohydrates be the driver for you, or let proteins be the driver for you, depending on your activity levels that particular day. Any questions there, Shane?
No, we're okay there at the minute.
Okay, Grant. Again, I just put this in here, these key issues, just because coaches and parents are things that you might just be able to look out for in some of the groups that you're working with. A big thing that I would notice is that people don't eat enough to support the training that they're doing. So that goes for everybody. But if we take some teenage athletes or teenage players there, if they're not eating enough to support their training, how are they going to grow as well? They're not going to get maximal growth that they would like. So that's a key thing there. So something to look out for, and maybe to push with our younger players in particular, that good nutrition, so that they have enough to grow and to train as well. Looking for quick fixes. Protein is everywhere at the minute, and everybody thinks protein is the be all and end all. And Sharon, I need to get stronger in the gym, so I'm taking all these protein shakes. And I was like, right, well, let me see your diet, and the diet's shocking. You're not going to, and you're not eating enough as well, so you're not going to get stronger by taking a whole load of protein if there's issues everywhere else. So just be conscious of that too. Maybe you might spot that in some of your players, that they're looking for that quick fix. Another thing is not eating after training. Is something that I would find a lot, that people are afraid to maybe undo the think that I'm after burning 500 calories in this training session, I can't eat because I'll just put the weight back on or whatnot. But that's not the way to go. If we want to adapt to the training session, we need to get food into us. And if we want to make sure that we can train really hard the next day and burn the extra calories, if that's what you're after, well, then you need to get the food into us there in that recovery period as well. So there are a few things to look out for. In terms of, again, of this bit for the coaches, what can you as a coach control? Allowing water breaks during training sessions. So you're just going to offset that opportunity to become dehydrated. So allow those water breaks, maybe encouraging players to carry water bottles with them. So it might be a case of saying, okay, boys and girls, right, the next day to train, I want you all to carry your own water bottle. Or it could be a case of saying, point out some senior player within the club and saying, you see, such and such is always carrying the water bottles with them, like, I want you to do the same. So that's a good thing there, is to be hydrated. And when we're hydrated, we tend to want to look after ourselves and eat properly as well. Removing confectionery items from the dressing rooms. Look, at confectionery items are sugar generally, and if it's sugar, it's going to give us energy, and that's good at half time, or we do want the energy, but there's better sources of energy for us. So what I would say, maybe at half time, don't provide the confectionery items, provide fruit instead, because fruit will give us the energy as well, but you're just planting that seed in terms of healthy eating, healthier message towards your players if you have fruit there. Sports drinks, I put an asterisk beside it. Sports drinks, again, a bit like your confectionery items, will provide us with energy and they will do a job for us. But for younger players in particular, I wouldn't put sports drinks in a dressing room, because if they see it, they think, oh, sports drinks are good for me, and they end up drinking them all day long, and they'll take them and they're drinking them in school, and they're drinking them away from training sessions or away from matches, but that's not what we want. So sports drinks have a role to play, but I wouldn't be putting them into an underage dressing room purely because it gives that message that they're good, they're a healthy thing to drink on a daily basis. Promote healthy eating, which ties into that first message or first point above, and encourage players to come well fueled. So it might be a case of saying, really tough session there today, guys, make sure you go home now and get such and such into you so that you recover properly. Or we've tough training session coming up now the next day, I want to make sure you all eat well now tomorrow before to get yourselves ready. So things like that is something that very simply a coach can control, and hopefully today from the presentation you'll be able to take up a few things from it and being able to realise the importance of nutrition. So if you can just throw in a few messages here and there, it'll just plant that seed for the players. And if it's a case you need to educate the players a little bit further, it could be a case of getting a leaflet, or downloading a leaflet, or handing them out, or sending home a leaflet, getting a guest speaker like myself or somebody in to give a talk to your group, or using that role model. So again, as I said, picking out the senior player within the club and saying, geez, look what such and such is doing, and you'll get some of your players to copy or to mimic them, which is good as well. And these here then practical tips that the players can take, and actually everybody on the call here can take. It'd be useful for everybody. So the top one there is getting enough sleep. So we do all our recovery the majority of our recovery at night. So if we get that sleep, then we have a greater chance of recovering properly. And if we eat something before we go to bed, so something small, you're just providing your body with nutrients there that they can utilise at night. So if we provide ourselves with protein at night before bed, well then that's going to be circulating, which is going to help with our recovery as we sleep. Always eat breakfast. So what breakfast is going to do for us is, if we take the breakfast, we've a greater chance of getting a better routine throughout that day, and you're less likely to snack unhealthily in the morning if we get a breakfast. And what also breakfast will do for us is that if we had a training session last night, the breakfast then this morning is going to help again to recover from last night, but it's prepping me for my next training session. Carry the water bottle, as we said, pack that recovery snack, particularly if we're going from, we're not going to get a larger meal, or if we're to sit in the car an hour before we get home, or if we're training at lunchtime and we're straight into the classroom, just have a recovery snack with you. Be that little bit organised then in terms of what we're doing across the day. So for example, all of that stuff I give you today, there was nothing new in it, I imagine. And I'm going to say it's simple. It is simple, but the how it's hard to implement is the time and the time pressures. So just maybe meal prep might help with that. If we do a batch shop on a Sunday and a batch cook Sunday evening, just to make those meals for a couple of days, that might help. If we take a lunchbox with us, then we're less likely to eat unhealthily when we're away from the home if we take a lunchbox with us. If we're looking for ideas, buying a cookbook, and I know everybody's taken into cooking now when they've been off the last couple of weeks, and maybe you have one or two go-to meals now which will help as well. Simple things like replacing sugary snacks with fruit or nuts. So that's what I said earlier, but just your choice, try and embed in the better habits for ourselves, and we do that consistently. That's where we'll get the changes. I'm going to flick down to the bottom there just about keeping a food diary. Now, it's not recommended that everybody keep a food diary all the time, but it might be no harm that every so often you just write down what you're doing so that you can check in, because sometimes we're unaware of what we're doing. So maybe everybody on here tomorrow, you might just jot down what you're doing, and you'll be able to look back and say, Jesus, I'm only getting 2 portions of fruit and veg per day, and I'm eating loads from the top, and I'm only getting 1 portion of dairy in. So when we write it down, it's easier to see where changes might need to take place. So it's no harm every so often just jotting that.
Folks, I'm just not sure what happened there. I'll just get in contact with Sharon, try to get it back going in a few minutes. Just hang on the line.
Can you hear me?
Yeah, we can hear you there. I think I have to just give you permission just to... Or can you share the screen?
Yeah, is that it up?
Yeah.
Grand, sorry, I don't know what happened there. It must be some internet connection or something. Anyway, just to finish, the key starting point for all is a healthy, balanced diet, and then from that you target your pre-exercise and post-exercise nutrition. So you're pulling all that in. Pull in the hydration as well. So keeping an eye on keeping an eye on your water intake, your fluid intake, improving the body composition, which tends to come if we match our nutrition alongside our training. We tend to get that anyway. And what then it'll lead to is that improved performance. And ultimately, that's what we're all striving for. That's what everybody is training for, is that improved performance. And if you're willing to give up, as I say, if you're willing to give up training give up your time to go training 2-3 times a week, why not pull in some of this nutrition alongside it? And that's when your performance levels would go through the roof. And particularly then if you can get 5, 10, 15 of your panel to do it, I'm telling you, that's where the results come. Because if you can get the improved performance from a number of players that they can train really well, that's when the changes will transfer then onto the pitch for you. So that's me, Shane. Thanks everybody. If you have any questions there, you can shoot them through.
Yeah, we have a few questions there, Sharon. I know you might have answered this. Would you recommend powdered protein shakes as a source of protein? I think I answered that one.
Yeah, look, would I recommend it? Not first off, but is there any problems with it in taking it? No. So food first, but if you can't get it from food, no problem with your whey protein shakes.
At what age would you allow sports drinks, even just a gulp, a small gulp at half time?
Look, again, I would just say, excuse me, it would just be a case of trying to avoid having them because it's just the wrong message that you're providing. But look, at any age group, really, you can give them the sports drink because of the job it's going to do. But think of... I'd nearly be thinking of what is the performance level of that group of players. So it might be your minor team that are competing in championship. That might be your starting age group for it, because they might be the ones that will need the extra fueling that I'm thinking of. But again, the reason I avoid putting it in there is the message that it's providing, or the message that it's given off in terms of sports drinks are good for us.
Okay, and there's two. I'll put two into one here. What fruits would you recommend most at half time, And then I had someone else just got on to me about their child eats raw vegetables. What would be your recommendation on that, or is it good or bad?
Yeah, no problem taking raw vegetables, because again, it's the veg. If somebody doesn't like veg, the best way to do it is to try to mix it into their food. So if you're making a curry, just throw in loads of veg. If you're making a stew, throw in loads of veg. Or if you're making a pasta sauce, you can blitz the veg into it. So if it was a case that person didn't like the veg, just hide it in the food some way. But if they're taking raw veg, no problem. In terms of the fruits at half time, any goes. The bananas are probably the one that's going to give you the largest amount of carbs. But if we take oranges, melons, let me think. Just watermelons coming into my head, but those foods will tick a box for hydrating you as well. But any fruits go, but bananas are the highest in carbs for you.
Okay. There seems to be a lot of players taking electrolyte gels. Do you find beneficial?
Your electrolytes really are only needed if you're a heavy sweater, or if you were training during that heavy spell of weather that we had there. So electrolytes and electrolyte gels are good, will serve purpose if you're a heavy sweater, if you're sweating a lot. It'll just help you to hold on to body water. Do I recommend them? Look at if you can get your electrolytes from somewhere else, i.e. you can make up your own sports drink with water, pinch of salt and diluted juice, and that's going to do the same job for you.
And just the last one there, is there anything good for bone support?
Yes, so you need, if you have weakened bones, you need both vitamin D and calcium are the key things. Vitamin D, the main source of it is from sunlight, and during this good spell of weather that we have, we need to be spending at least about 20 minutes per day without sunscreen to get the vitamin D. But all of us should be supplementing with vitamin D during the winter months. So that's maybe something that person needs to take on board, add a supplementing with it during the winter months. And if not, it might be worth considering doing it. Calcium is the other key nutrient. So making sure then that we're getting 3 to 5 portions of the dairy across the day to get it in. And if maybe, as somebody said earlier, if you don't take dairy, just look at the type of foods that you're taking and to see, are you making up for it? Yes, we can get calcium in some of our veg, but in smaller doses. So we might need to eat more veg. So for that individual, it might be worth keeping a food diary themselves, just to check in initially, or going to see a dietitian if they do need to extra help in terms of where to get those food sources.
Okay, I think that's it, Sharon. Just on behalf of Louth Coaching and Games, Sharon, just like to thank you. I know you give us a chat to our development squads before, and I'm sure a lot of clubs around. I think you were supposed to come up to my own club, Kilcarely, just before the COVID-19. But I think clubs would get a big benefit even to talking to parents. I know we've this recorded. I'll be emailing it out to everyone on the call tomorrow. Feel free to share it with whatever club coaches, but it's definitely worthwhile maybe getting Sharon up to your club just for a quick half-hour chat just with your players or parents. As you can see, Sharon has played at the top of her game. I know I'm not 100%. Is it 5 All-Stars, Sharon?
3.
I was giving you 2 extra.
Yeah.
But multiple All-Ireland winner for Donaghmine and also for Monaghan GAA over the years. So I'd like to thank her for coming on the call. Stay tuned. Next week's webinar is based on linear speed work for coaches. We'll have an advert up on social media in the next day or so. If anyone has any other questions, feel free to type them in. And if not, thanks very much, and hopefully chat to you again soon.